Jack Loeffler is an American oral historian, radio producer, writer, and environmentalist. He is known for his work documenting the culture and ecology of the American Southwest. He was Edward Abbey's best friend. I had the honor and privilege of interviewing him in his home in Durango, Colorado in December 2023. He was 87 years old at the time of this interview. This interview is comprised of 7 questions broken up into 11 parts into a single YouTube playlist. The full interview is also in the playlist, but will be released last. Jack is full of wisdom, and I did my best to let him speak freely without boundaries during our 3-hour conversation. Given this dynamic, Jack provided long, winding answers to my questions as he reflected back on his life. With that, let's get to the interview.
I'm no longer a jazz player. I quit about 1990 because it takes a lot out of you. I mean, going for a high note, I had this vision of going for a high F and having an aneurysm and dying.
It takes that much.
But sound has always been central to my life, music. And so I got really into it, and the more I got into it with the Hispano culture, the more I realized that their music really, a lot of their music, not all of it, is connected to habitat. And actually I included in the thumb drive I'm going to give you an indita, which is a musical form. I was able to identify maybe 50 different musical forms in Hispano folk music going back in time. I mean, I'd recorded songs that people were singing when they came up the Rio Grande back a long time ago. And
would you be open to letting me use some of those recordings as the soundscape for this project I'm working on?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's one, Indita del Rio Grande, that's got components of both Native American music and Hispano music in it, but it sings about the Rio Grande and just all of the goodie that goes along with that.
Wow.
And it was written by my friend Chuy Martinez, performed by him. And Chuy got himself across the river when he was 8 years old from Mexico.
Okay.
And he was gifted musically. Mm-hmm. And he became part of the conjunto that traveled with Cesar Chavez.
Oh, wow. So was he based in
California for a while?
Yeah, San Luis Valley. That's close to San Jose, where I'm at.
And and Dolores Huerta, do you know her? She and Cesar worked together, and I spent a day with her. Boy, what a great lady she is at one point. But at any rate, it's a gradual procedure, and to me, I've never been linear. It's always been, earlier on, I had a vision of the necessity for pulling nails out of my frame of reference and letting it become a sphere of reference so that it was multidimensional, really multidimensional. Actually, recently I came to the conclusion that consciousness itself is a dimension, which is a thought. But at any rate, so I recorded all of those songs, and in order to get the grant, I had to put it back. And the way I thought best to put it back was on public radio stations. And so it was broadcast throughout New Mexico and southern Colorado and wherever Hispano culture was. And then I went. I'd always been deeply interested in Native American culture. And I had, starting way back in 1960 or 61, I ate peyote in a teepee where there were 5 different Indian cultures at the same time. And I realized that each one of those cultural perspectives was complete, but seeing them all come together in a peyote ceremony, Native American church ceremony, was very profound. And so
were you in your 30s in the early 1960s or late 20s? Around how old were you when you?
I was in 1960. I would have been 24.
24. Okay. So.
And I'd been smoking pot for several years.
Okay. Okay.
I started smoking pot when I was in the Army.
Oh wow.
As a jazz musician.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The dealer came by one day and said, "Hey man, you got to read this."
Oh right.
And I looked at it, and it was Howl by Allen Ginsberg.
Oh wow. It's just also a time like kids these days, like the prohibition's over,
Yeah.
At least in most states.
Yeah, well, it's what I think about then is I don't smoke pot anymore for the big reason is that I want to continue to screw up my lungs, but it's no fun anymore because you're not an outlaw.
Right. You're not an outlaw for sure. So going back to this, like, was that your first, what I would say, hallucinogenic experience? I mean,
Well, it was the first It was the first time I got high on an hallucinogen. No, the first time was before that.
Okay.
It was also peyote. Peyote's been I don't take it anymore. I haven't taken it in probably over 50 years, but
it's the opposite of addictive.
Yeah.
I'll generalize and say hallucinogens in general. I personally haven't done peyote, but play around with mushrooms, and it's very opposite of addictive. So
Yeah.
you do what you're like, I don't need to go back there for a while.
Yeah, no, I took it. I decided the last time I took it that I'm going to take it with me.
Yeah.
Keep that headset as best I can, and I been pretty successful with it. But the upshot is that was the first time I really got into it with Native Americans, and I wanted to continue the process, and so I somehow, I can't remember when I first started recording them, but my great friend Rena Swensel, who was born into the Tewa Pueblo of Santa Clara, north of Santa Fe, south of Espanola, called me up one day in the 1980s and asked me if I could record her mother singing Tewa children's songs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I was blown away to be invited by a Native American to record music, because that's not something that normally happens. I have a good friend named Tony Isaacs in Taos, I hope he's still alive, who had a recording company, Rainbow Cassettes,
Mm-hmm.
and he recorded a lot of Native American people all over the place, while I was recording Hispano people all over the place. And but I had never really recorded Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went out there, I started recording. Well, first of all, I was so undone by having been invited to go record in a pueblo, which
Mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
totally verboten,
Mm-hmm.
and I did. And Rena, who was at that time married to a man named Ralph Swensel, who was a tutor at St. John's College in Santa Fe, beautiful. He was a really neat guy. I met him and knew him, but he died of cancer. And that was a sad thing, because she lost her grandson skiing into a tree, her mom, whom I recorded, and her husband the same year. But Rena became like a sister,
Mm-hmm.
really close friend. Her photograph is in that book.
So it sounds like you went on this, you get invited to record Native American culture, and then it goes deeper than that. You establish.
Well, people trusted me.
Yeah.
Because I never used it in any way that shouldn't be used. And
Mm-hmm.
Boy, when I think about all of the people that I recorded, great friends, many of them gone now, but people knew that I wouldn't misuse it, that I told them that I wanted to put it on the radio, because my thinking is that if I can get their perspectives in their own words out where people can hear them, it will invigorate a new level of consciousness in our culture, which is stuck in an economically dominated paradigm. And they weren't. And boy, Rena was right on, right down the line. And so I started recording different peoples. For some reason, people in the folklore community wanted me to do occasional seminars on how you do it. And so I did. And more and more, that led to people asking me if I would come do a project in their area. So I spent 4 months doing a whole project in the Sonoran Desert, which fascinates me. And I have a friend there whose picture's in this book.
Like Cabeza Prieta area? Or?
And east of there. Well, I mean, actually, I recorded right up against it.
Organ pipe?
Well, I did an organ pipe. I did a project there with the Park Service. My friend Bruce Hucko shot the photographs, and I did this.
You just where every place I've named in this landscape, it sounds like you've recorded it.
Yeah, I've camped a lot out in the Cabeza, and all over I mean, at age 87, when you're fascinated by a huge region, you get a chance to spend
you spend some time.
A lot of time out in it. And but recording, then I started recording habitat. And then I discovered MS recording, which is really cool, which is mid-side recording, which I will describe right this minute. The top microphone, they're in a configuration like this. The top microphone is a cardioid, directional mic. The one beneath it is a figure of 8. So that the figure of 8 is going into the right channel on your recorder, the cardioid on the left, and then you put it into your editing system, in my case Pro Tools. Then you duplicate the second channel, throw the duplicated channel out of phase with the other channel, and then you spread them apart. In other words, you're working with 3 channels in your editing system, and you can either zoom in on a given bird, or you can back off and bring up the habitat where the bird is singing. And that is beautiful. And that
technology evolve.
Yeah, and the evolution of it blows me away. But I also I can't tell you how many concerts of chamber music I've recorded, and choral music, and CDs of it and stuff. It's really, I love sound, and working with sound has been really wonderful, right down the line. I mean, I've recorded everything I could think of to record, but for example, with regard to how it relates to habitat, my friends Gary Nabhan and Laurie Monty. Gary Nabhan, you may be familiar with his work. He's a world-class ethnobotanist, for one thing, and got a MacArthur Award way back when to do his work. But he and Laurie and I have spent a lot of time together down in Seri, Indian country, in Sonora. And they especially, I've gone along to record, and then I taught Laurie how to record, and so she's gone on to really do it. But actually, she ended up getting her PhD in ethnoecology or ecoethnology or some such. But at any rate, one day I was recording my friend, a Seri Indian man named Jesus Rojo Montaño. And he spoke no English, but he did speak some Spanish, and I speak some Spanish. My Spanish basically comes from, recording Hispanos in New Mexico, but also recording Indians in Mexico who speak a pidgin Spanish. And so we communicate. Well, Jesus Rojo told me he was going to sing the song of the leafcutter ant. He told me this in Spanish. And then he started to assume the characteristics physically of the leafcutter ant. And, I mean, he was still a human being, of course, but he was totally a leafcutter ant in his own head. He sang the song 4 times, and then he took many seconds to come back out of it again. Wow. And I realized that he really understands leafcutter ants.